The morning sunlight filtered through the lace curtains of the bridal suite, casting soft golden patterns across the pale blue walls. My heart fluttered in that surreal way it does when you know life is about to change. I stood before the full-length mirror in the corner of the room, my wedding dress hugging me in all the right places, delicate lace trailing down to the polished wood floors. It was everything I had imagined as a little girl, elegant, romantic, timeless. And for a few precious moments, the world felt untouched, suspended in perfection. Jenna, my best friend since middle school, fussed with the small pearl hairpins that she insisted needed to be just right. Her presence was calming, a steady hand in the whirlwind of emotion. She kept making these soft, delighted sounds behind me, half sighs, half squeals, as if words weren't enough to express what she was feeling. "Claire, you look like a dream," she whispered. "Like some kind of fairy tale bride." I smiled at her reflection in the mirror, my eyes misting a little. "It doesn't feel real yet," I admitted. "I keep waiting to wake up." "You won't," Jenna grinned. "This is real. And you deserve every second of it." My father, Victor, knocked lightly before entering, and when he stepped into the room, his eyes went wide with emotion. For a second, he didn't say anything. He just looked at me the way only a father could, like he was seeing the little girl who used to twirl in princess costumes in the living room and the woman standing before him all at once. "Wow," he finally managed. "Claire, you're breathtaking." His voice cracked at the end, and that got me. I reached for his hand, and he kissed my forehead the way he always had when I was nervous. "You ready, pumpkin?" I nodded, swallowing back the knot rising in my throat. "I think so. Nervous, but ready." Downstairs, the chapel at Hillsmere Bay was already filled with soft music and the scent of white roses. The old building overlooked the coastline, a historic gem with stained glass windows that glowed in the sunlight. It had been my dream venue since Daniel proposed. The sea breeze drifted in through the arched windows, bringing with it a serenity that I clung to with both hands. Every detail had fallen into place so beautifully, the handwritten calligraphy on the place cards, the string quartet, even the delicate floral arrangements that matched my bouquet of peonies and gardenias. It had taken months of planning, sleepless nights, and careful coordination, but it was all worth it. Today was the day. The beginning of forever. Daniel. I could picture him downstairs, probably pacing like he always did when he was excited or anxious. He had texted me earlier that morning, "Can't wait to see you, Angel. I love you." I hadn't replied yet. I was saving all my words for the moment I saw him waiting at the altar. I turned to Jenna, who was finishing up my makeup with a soft swipe of blush. "Do you think he's crying?" "Oh, definitely," she laughed. "I bet he's already gone through half the tissues in his tux pocket." The thought made me laugh, and it settled something in my chest. I felt radiant, alive, and, finally, at peace. All the doubts I'd buried over the years about whether I was lovable, whether I could trust in forever, they melted under the warmth of this moment. I was about to marry a man who, despite all his quirks and stubborn streaks, loved me deeply. He'd fought for us more than once. And I had too. Jenna handed me the bouquet and fluffed my veil as I took one last glance in the mirror. "You ready to go, bride of the year?" Before I could answer, my father offered me his arm, and I looped mine through it, anchoring myself to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. I leaned my head on his shoulder for a second as we began walking toward the chapel entrance. "I always knew you'd make it here," he said gently. "I almost can't believe it," I whispered back. "It's all just perfect." As we approached the double doors, the quiet murmur of guests on the other side reached my ears. My heart beat faster, not from fear but from the anticipation of stepping into a moment I'd dreamed about for so long. I imagined the music shifting, the hush falling over the crowd, and then Daniel, his eyes locking with mine, that crooked smile spreading across his face. I squeezed my father's arm. "Let's do this." He grinned. "Let's give them a show." I closed my eyes for a moment, breathed in the scent of roses and sea air, and stepped forward, one foot into the future, one final breath in the dream. Everything felt like a movie scene, one where everything ends with a kiss and a fade to white. This was the kind of beginning little girls dream about. And for now, nothing had come to ruin it. Not yet. The doors to the chapel were just about to open when the sharp click of heels against stone echoed down the hallway, slicing through the anticipation like a blade. I turned instinctively, bouquet clutched in my hands, and saw Evelyn, Daniel's mother, storming toward us with a fury I hadn't seen before. Her expression was pinched, her eyes wild, and the moment she opened her mouth, the entire air shifted. "You little thief," she hissed, pointing a trembling finger directly at me. "Where is it, Claire? Where's my mother's necklace?" For a moment, all I could do was stare at her. I blinked, completely thrown. What are you talking about?" "The sapphire necklace," she spat. "The one that's been in our family for 3 generations. It's missing. Gone. And you were the last one in my dressing room during the rehearsal dinner." Her voice, shrill and shaking with accusation, bounced off the chapel walls and brought everything to a halt. My breath caught in my throat as everyone turned. Jenna's mouth dropped open beside me. My father stepped forward, his protective instincts kicking in. "That's a serious accusation," he said, his voice low but firm. "And on her wedding day? Have you lost your mind?" "I'm not making this up, Victor," Evelyn snapped, her voice rising. "The necklace was in my room, in a locked case, and now it's gone. You think it's just a coincidence Claire was the only one alone in there yesterday?" I shook my head, stunned. "I didn't go through your things, Evelyn. I barely stepped into your room for more than 5 minutes, and that was only because you asked me to grab your wrap. I didn't even touch anything else." But she wasn't listening. She was pacing now, dramatic, clutching at the invisible pearls around her neck. "You think I don't know girls like you? Marrying up. Playing perfect. Acting like you're part of this family when you don't belong. I should have stopped this a long time ago. Mom." Daniel's voice cut through the tension as he came rushing down the hall. His tie was half done, and the panic on his face mirrored my own. "What's going on?" Evelyn turned to him, her hands shaking. "She took it, Daniel. Your fiancé. The heirloom necklace is gone." Daniel's eyes landed on mine, confusion written across every feature. "Claire, is that true?" "Of course not." I snapped, my voice trembling. "Why would I steal anything, let alone something from your family? What would I even do with it?" His face flickered with doubt, and it pierced deeper than any of Evelyn's words. "She says you were alone in her room. For less than 5 minutes. I cried. She asked me to grab her shawl because her hands were full. I didn't even look at anything else." But Daniel wasn't looking at Evelyn anymore. He was staring at me like he couldn't quite reconcile the woman he loved with this sudden, awful accusation. The room felt like it was closing in, suffocating, the excitement from earlier fading into something bitter and cold. Guests were beginning to murmur behind the doors. The string quartet had stopped playing. The officiant peeked out, puzzled. I could feel the day unraveling like a ribbon being yanked too fast. "You need to return the necklace," Evelyn said, folding her arms tightly, "before this whole thing turns into a bigger disgrace than it already is." "I didn't take it," I said, louder this time, planting my feet as firmly as I could. "I would never do something like that. I don't care what you think of me, Evelyn, but you don't get to storm in here and ruin my wedding with lies." "She's not lying," Jenna muttered beside me. "Claire's not capable of that." Evelyn snorted. "You're her best friend. Of course you'd say that." Daniel stepped between us then, holding up both hands, as though that might somehow slow the collision happening in real time. "Everyone just stop," he said, but his voice cracked. Then he turned to me again. "Claire, if there's even a chance, even the slightest chance this is true, I need to know now. Because I can't go through with this wedding under a cloud of suspicion." I stared at him, disbelief crashing over me. "You think I did this? You really think I'd steal from your family the night before our wedding?" "I don't know what to think," he snapped, frustration boiling over. "But if you give the necklace back now, we can move past this. No police, no scandal. Just, please." My fingers dug into the bouquet, petals crumpling under my grip. I had imagined this morning so many times, walking down the aisle, meeting his eyes, whispering vows full of love. And now here we were, just minutes before that dream should have started, and I was being treated like a criminal. I looked into his eyes, hoping to find some glimmer of faith in me. There was none. Just fear and suspicion. My stomach dropped. I can't marry someone who believes the worst of me without proof, I said quietly, my voice cracking. If you don't know me better than that by now, then maybe this isn't the beginning we thought it was. I turned away, heart pounding, breath shallow. My father stepped beside me, placing a steadying hand on my back as I walked back down the hallway in the opposite direction. Away from the aisle, away from the altar, away from the man I had almost called my husband. And just like that, my perfect beginning shattered. I stood frozen in the entryway of the chapel, the heavy scent of roses now cloying in my throat. My veil floated gently from the breeze drifting in through the open windows, a mocking whisper of the beauty this day was supposed to hold. Guests craned their necks in confusion, a hush falling over the pews as murmurs filled the air. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, watching, speculating, waiting. My hands trembled as I tried to keep my bouquet from shaking, the tight knot in my stomach making it hard to breathe. And then Daniel stepped into the aisle. He didn't smile. He didn't reach for me. He stood like a statue at the altar, his posture stiff, his jaw locked in a way I'd only seen during arguments with his mother. The warmth that once lit his face every time he looked at me was gone, replaced by something I couldn't name, somewhere between anger and heartbreak. I took one hesitant step forward. Then another. Jenna trailed behind me, silent, her gaze darting between me and Daniel like she was silently praying someone would call for a do-over. That this was all a bad joke. When I reached him, he didn't say my name. Instead, he asked, "Did you take the necklace, Claire?" I blinked. "You're really doing this now?" He looked down at the floor and shook his head, almost like he hated himself for the question, but couldn't help asking it anyway. Evelyn's beside herself. "The necklace is gone. You were the last one in her dressing room." "Daniel," I said, my voice brittle, "we've been together for 3 years. I've stood by you through job changes, family meltdowns, your father's surgery, every fight you've had with your mother, and this is what you think I'd do? On our wedding day?" "I don't know what to think," he muttered. "I just know this is a disaster, and if there's even the smallest chance you took it, if this can be fixed by you returning it quietly, then maybe we can salvage this." "Salvage?" I repeated, stunned. "You think I'm trying to salvage something I didn't break?" Jenna stepped forward, but I held up my hand. I needed to hear it straight from him. "So you believe her?" I asked. "You believe I'd steal a necklace and lie to your face about it?" He didn't answer. That silence hit harder than any accusation. "I would have walked through fire for you," I whispered. "And this is the hill you choose to die on, your mother's paranoia?" "It's not just her paranoia," he said, his voice tight. "There's a pattern, Claire. You and Evelyn never got along. You've always resented how close we are. I thought it was just tension, but now I'm wondering if it was more." I stepped back like he'd slapped me. My heart cracked in places I didn't know existed. "You're giving me an ultimatum," I said. "Return something I didn't take, or what?" He looked at me then. "For real?" And his face, for the briefest second, softened. But it wasn't love I saw. It was sorrow. "Or I can't marry you," he said. The silence in the chapel roared in my ears. A woman near the back gasped. Someone whispered my name. I didn't look at anyone. Just him. I could have screamed. I could have begged. I could have denied it louder, demanded someone check her hotel room again. But none of that would have mattered. He'd already made up his mind, or at least, he wasn't willing to risk believing in me. So I straightened my spine and nodded. "Then we're done," I said quietly. "Because I won't spend my life trying to prove myself to someone who doesn't trust me. I deserve better than that." I turned from him. No dramatic exit, no running tears, not yet. Just the steady walk back down the aisle I'd never expected to retreat from. My heels clicked softly on the floor, echoing in the silence. The officiant stepped aside. Jenna caught up to me, her hand gripping mine as we reached the door. "Claire," Daniel's voice called out behind me, but I didn't stop. I didn't turn around. Let him stand there in his uncertainty. Let him feel what it meant to throw away something real because of a lie whispered by someone too petty to let her son be happy. Outside, the sun still shone, cruelly unaware that everything had fallen apart. I walked down the stone steps and out into the garden where the photographer had been setting up to capture our first moments as husband and wife. He lowered his camera slowly, stunned. "I won't be needing any photos," I said, and walked past him. Behind me, the chapel doors stayed shut. Maybe the guests were still seated, unsure what to do, wondering if the wedding would somehow restart. It wouldn't. It was over. Not because of a necklace, not really, but because Daniel had made a choice. And it wasn't me. The bell over the cafe door chimed as I stepped inside, its cheerful jingle at odds with the storm brewing in my chest. I hadn't wanted to come, hadn't wanted to see him again, but Daniel had insisted we talk. "Just 10 minutes, his message said. "You deserve answers." Part of me had been ready to delete it, to block him and move on, but the other part, the one that still needed to understand how everything had gone so wrong, agreed to meet. It was a small place tucked at the edge of Hillsmere Bay, somewhere we used to go for hot cocoa after long walks on the beach. Now it felt different, like something sacred had been tainted. The barista glanced up and gave a soft, awkward smile, clearly recognizing me, though probably unsure whether to offer congratulations or condolences. Daniel was already seated at the corner table, his hands wrapped around a coffee cup he hadn't touched. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept much, like the weight of his choices was beginning to sink in. But I didn't let that soften me. Not anymore. I walked up and sat across from him without a word. My posture was stiff, my face unreadable. I wasn't there to coddle him. He cleared his throat. "Claire." I waited. He wanted this meeting. Let him speak. He began, then faltered. "I just need to know the truth. One last time. Did you take it?" The question hit like a slap. After everything, after the ceremony, the public humiliation, the heartbreak, he still thought this was about the necklace? I leaned forward, my voice low and sharp. "You called me here to ask that again?" "I don't know what to believe anymore," he said, his tone defensive. "It's been chaos. My mother's convinced you did it, the guests were whispering, my family's in pieces. I just need something that makes sense." "You want something that makes sense?" I snapped, my control slipping. "You humiliated me in front of everyone I know. You accused me of being a thief. On our wedding day. And now you want me to comfort you with answers." His jaw tightened. "I just thought if you were honest." I didn't let him finish. My hand flew before I realized what I was doing, connecting with his cheek in a clean, stinging slap. The sound echoed through the cafe, and for a heartbeat, everything stilled. But then Daniel's face contorted, and before I could process it, his hand lashed out and struck me back. The world snapped. It didn't hurt so much physically. He hadn't used full force, but the shock of it, the betrayal of it, left me breathless. Time froze. Jenna's voice had always told me, if he ever lays a hand on you, Claire, walk away and never look back. I'd never imagined I'd need to remember that advice. Not with Daniel. Not with the man who used to cradle my face like I was fragile porcelain. But here we were. I stood abruptly, the chair screeching against the floor. My cheek burned. "You son of a..." He didn't finish the sentence before his fist collided with Daniel's jaw. Daniel stumbled back into the table, coffee spilling everywhere, the ceramic cup shattering on the floor. "Dad," I yelled, grabbing his arm, but he was shaking with fury, eyes blazing. "He hit you," he growled, voice low and trembling. He laid hands on my daughter. Daniel wiped his mouth, dazed. "It wasn't like that. She hit me first." "You're a grown man," my father shouted. "You're supposed to know the difference between self-control and retaliation." Before it could escalate further, the cafe owner, a tall man with graying hair, stepped between them, raising his hands. "Everyone out," he said firmly. "Now, take your drama somewhere else. This is a cafe, not a war zone." I stepped away from them both, too stunned to cry, too raw to speak. My father turned to me, his hand gentle on my back now. "Let's go, Claire." I didn't look at Daniel as I left. I didn't want to see his regret or his excuses or whatever apology he might try to offer next. I walked out into the sunlight, the warmth on my skin feeling foreign, as if the world should have dimmed to match the numbness inside me. He hit me. That thought repeated, again and again, louder than the birds chirping, louder than the cars passing on the street. He hit me. Not a misunderstanding. Not a mistake. Not something I could erase or overlook or rationalize. It wasn't just about the necklace anymore, or his mother, or the wedding that never was. It was about who he became when things didn't go his way. And I finally understood. I didn't lose a husband that day. I escaped one. The ride home was quiet. My father kept glancing at me like he wanted to say something, but each time his lips parted, he seemed to think better of it. I was grateful. I didn't want words. I didn't want comfort or analysis or any more truth. I just wanted silence, something I could wrap around myself like armor, something that wouldn't betray me, wouldn't accuse me, wouldn't strike back when hurt. My cheek still tingled faintly where Daniel had hit me, but it wasn't the pain that lingered, it was the betrayal. The disbelief. The truth that no matter how much someone claims to love you, they can still become a stranger in an instant. When we pulled into my driveway, the house felt unfamiliar. It looked the same, of course, the pale yellow siding, the gardenias blooming along the front porch, the ceramic wind chime Jenna gave me still hanging by the door, but it felt like I was walking into a different life. Like the girl who had left that morning in a wedding dress no longer existed. I went straight to my room, kicked off my shoes, peeled off the clothes that felt like a costume now, relics from a ceremony that never happened. I left the bouquet on my vanity, the flowers already wilting around the edges, and collapsed onto my bed fully dressed, staring at the ceiling as tears slid quietly down my temples. I didn't sob. I didn't scream. I just let the grief settle in like fog, creeping through every part of me. By evening, word had spread. The ceremony was off, the bride was home, Daniel had made a scene. People didn't know about the slap, or the one he returned, or the cafe table shattering beneath the weight of my father's punch. They just knew something exploded, and I was the one left standing in the smoke. Jenna showed up later that night, slipping in with takeout and a bag full of snacks I wasn't hungry for. She didn't ask questions. She didn't tell me what I should feel. She just sat on the edge of my bed and took my hand, pressing a mug of tea into it with a soft, "I'm here." "I thought he loved me," I whispered. "I know," she said. "I thought so too. I thought we were unbreakable. That even if things got hard, we'd always talk it out. I never thought he'd doubt me like that. Hit me like that." Her jaw clenched, eyes flashing with restrained rage. "If your dad hadn't gotten to him first, I would've." We both laughed, but it was a bitter sound. A laugh made of splinters. The next few days passed in a haze. My phone buzzed constantly, texts from people who'd attended the wedding, friends trying to reach out, even a few from Evelyn of all people. I ignored them all. I couldn't stomach the thought of reading her words, let alone responding to them. Daniel's messages came in waves too, first confusion, then apologies, then long rambling paragraphs filled with justifications and grief. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I let the world shrink to my bedroom. My father brought me breakfast in the mornings, careful not to push. Jenna stayed over most nights, sleeping in the armchair with a blanket and a book she never really read. Sometimes I caught her watching me with tears in her eyes, like she was mourning someone she couldn't reach. One afternoon, I opened my messages just to delete them all, but paused on the last one from Daniel. "I still love you. Please don't shut me out forever." I stared at the screen, the words blurring as my eyes welled up. He still loved me? Was that supposed to fix it? Was I supposed to ignore that when it came down to it, he didn't trust me? That the second his mother pointed a finger, he didn't even hesitate? That he had raised his hand to me, not in a fight for survival, not in defense, but because I challenged him? Love wasn't supposed to hurt like that. Love wasn't supposed to make you feel small. I pressed delete. Journaling helped a little. Jenna had handed me a blank leather notebook and said, "When your brain starts screaming, let your hand scream with it." So I wrote. About the wedding that never was. About the bruise that bloomed on my cheek and faded too fast, leaving no proof behind. About the fear that maybe I'd missed signs all along, moments when Daniel had tried to control the narrative, when he'd prioritized appearances over truth. I wrote about Evelyn, too. How she always smiled with her teeth but not her eyes. How she dressed her contempt in politeness and poison for years. I'd tried so hard to win her over, to prove I was good enough. And all it had taken was one lie from her to unravel everything. The isolation was real, but it was also honest. I wasn't pretending anymore. I wasn't wearing a dress and walking into a dream someone else designed for me. I was here, in my pain, in my truth, and even though it hurt like hell, I knew this was the beginning of something. I just didn't know it yet. The sky was overcast the day I agreed to meet him. It matched the mood in my chest, muted, dull, uncertain. I'd debated it for days, letting his messages sit unread until curiosity gnawed at me enough to finally reply. One conversation. That's all, I wrote. In public. And now here I was, sitting at a wrought iron table outside the same cafe where everything shattered, waiting for a man who used to know the shape of my dreams to walk up like he hadn't destroyed them. Daniel arrived on time, dressed in jeans and a button-up shirt that looked wrinkled like he'd pulled it from a laundry basket without thinking. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically, but emotionally, like the weight of what he'd done had hollowed out some part of him. He approached slowly, uncertainty etched into every step. "Claire," he said, softly, like he wasn't sure if he had the right to say my name. I gave a curt nod. "Sit." He did. For a moment, we just sat in silence. The clink of cutlery and quiet hum of nearby conversations filled the space between us. I didn't look at him directly. I couldn't. Not yet. "I found the necklace," he said finally, his voice barely audible above the breeze. My eyes snapped to his. "What?" He swallowed hard. "My mom. She misplaced it. It fell behind one of her jewelry boxes in her suite. She found it yesterday." I stared at him, blinking slowly as the words sunk in. So I was telling the truth. "Yes," he said, shame pouring off him. "You were." I felt the sting in my chest before I could name it. Rage? Relief? Something in between? "She accused me of stealing," I said, my voice calm but hard. "On my wedding day. And you, my fiancé, believed her." "I know," he said. "Claire, I've thought about that moment 1,000 times. The way I didn't defend you. The way I let her take over. I failed you." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "You did more than fail me, Daniel. You humiliated me. You called me a thief in front of our families. You gave me an ultimatum. My voice broke and I cleared my throat. "You hit me." His face twisted, and he dropped his gaze to the table. "I'll never forgive myself for that. I lost control. I was angry and hurt and confused, but none of that excuses it. I've been seeing a therapist since that day. I've started working through my temper, my relationship with my mother, everything I ignored for so long." I exhaled slowly, unsure whether that made me feel better or worse. "I've cut ties with her," he added. That surprised me. "Completely?" He nodded. "I confronted her. Told her what she did was cruel. Manipulative. She tried to cry her way out of it, but I didn't fall for it this time. I told her I wouldn't be part of her life if she couldn't respect the woman I loved." I laughed bitterly. "Funny how you waited until after you destroyed that love." His mouth opened, but I lifted a hand. "No, you don't get to defend it. You want honesty? Here it is. I don't trust you anymore. I don't think I ever can. You showed me who you are when it matters. And that's someone who let his mother's word carry more weight than mine. Someone who raised a hand when he felt powerless instead of choosing compassion. Therapy doesn't undo that." Daniel winced, but didn't argue. "I understand," he said. "I'm not here to ask for another chance. I just wanted to tell you the truth. You deserve that." Something about his restraint made my chest ache. A quiet, tired ache. I didn't love him anymore, not in the way I used to, but a part of me would always mourn what we were supposed to be. The life we almost had. The children we named late at night when the world felt soft and possible. "I loved you," I said, "with everything I had. And I would have stood by you through anything, if you'd just believed in me." He nodded slowly. I know. And I didn't deserve you. A long silence passed, not uncomfortable exactly, but heavy. Honest. I finally looked him full in the face, memorizing the new lines grief had carved into it. I hope you find peace, Daniel, I said. But I can't be part of your healing. I'm still trying to survive my own. He blinked rapidly, then nodded. Take care of yourself, Claire. You too. When he stood and walked away, he didn't look back. And this time, neither did I. The clouds above began to part as I sat there alone, letting the quiet wrap around me. I wasn't whole, not yet. But I'd taken the first step. I had my truth. And now, finally, I could begin to move forward. I woke up the next morning to the sound of rain tapping softly against my window. It felt fitting, gentle, persistent, cleansing. There had been no dreams the night before. No replay of Daniel's face, no ghostly echoes of our wedding that never happened. Just sleep. Deep and uninterrupted. It felt foreign and strangely like a gift. I stayed under the covers a little longer, watching the gray sky outside and listening to the steady rhythm of water against glass. For the first time in weeks, there was no pressure to respond to anyone. No guilt. No sense of obligation. The silence wasn't suffocating anymore, it was permission. I reached for the journal Jenna had given me and opened it to a blank page. The last few entries had been raw, full of anger and hurt, scrawled in uneven lines with tear-stained ink. But this time, my hand moved slower. More deliberate. I wrote, "Today I choose myself." It felt simple, but it was everything. That sentence sat at the top of the page like a promise. One I was finally ready to keep. I spent the morning quietly, moving through my house like it was a space I was learning to love again. I made tea. Not the kind Daniel liked, but the spiced one I always bought and rarely made because he said it smelled too strong. I played music while I cleaned out drawers, rediscovered old notebooks and photos I'd stuffed away during the move I never finished. I found postcards from cities I'd once dreamed of visiting: Barcelona, Kyoto, Santorini, reminders of the woman I used to be before I'd bent myself into someone else's idea of perfect. The weight of that realization settled in my chest. How much I had molded my life to fit Daniel's world. How many times I had apologized for being too much, or too sensitive, or too independent. How long I'd silenced my own instincts because love, I thought, was about compromise. But love shouldn't have cost me myself. Around noon, I got a message from my boss, gently checking in and offering more time off if I needed it. I stared at the screen for a while before responding. I'll be taking a full leave of absence. I need time to figure out where I'm going next. I didn't add details. I didn't feel the need to explain. That alone felt like growth. Later, I called Jenna. She picked up on the second ring. "Are you okay?" she asked, breathless. "I think I am," I said. "Or getting there. You sound different." "I feel different," I admitted. "I'm not sure where I'm going, but I know I need to leave Hillsmere Bay. Just for a little while." There was a beat of silence on the line, and then she said, "I get it. Honestly, I was wondering when you'd say that." I exhaled, a little laugh escaping. "I found those postcards from years ago. Remember the ones we used to pin to the vision board in college?" She groaned playfully. "Don't remind me. I still can't believe we thought we'd do a photo tour through Italy with $50 and a shared camera." I smiled. "We were dreamers. You still are. You just forgot for a while." Her words sat with me after we hung up. I wasn't sure where to go, but I knew I needed something completely mine. Something untouched by my history with Daniel or the whispers in town. I needed to breathe in a new language. Taste food I couldn't pronounce. Get lost somewhere that didn't know my name. By the evening, I was on my laptop researching flights. I didn't know how long I'd be gone or where exactly I'd end up, but the idea of leaving felt like oxygen. I wasn't running away, I was reclaiming something. I booked a one-way ticket to Azure Cay, an island I'd seen once in a travel magazine and never forgotten. There was something about the deep turquoise water and the quiet promise of solitude that drew me in. It felt like a beginning, not an escape. When I clicked confirm, a wave of calm settled over me. No tears. No fear. Just clarity. That night, I packed a small suitcase, not everything, just what I needed. The rest could wait. I chose clothes that made me feel good in my skin, books I never had time to read, my journal, and an old camera that still worked if I charged it just right. I ran my hand over its surface, remembering the way I used to capture moments, freeze them in time. Maybe I'd start again. Maybe I'd find beauty in unfamiliar places. I stood in the doorway of my room for a long time, the lights off, watching the rain slide down the windows. Hillsmere Bay had been home, yes, but it had also become a place of grief and ghosts. I needed to go. To find the girl who once believed the world was wide and welcoming. Tomorrow I would leave. But tonight I chose myself. And that was more than enough. The moment I stepped off the boat onto Azure Cay, I felt something shift in me. The sun poured over the island like honey, thick, golden, and impossibly warm. The scent of salt clung to the air, and the wind tugged playfully at the hem of my dress. It was nothing like Hillsmere Bay. There were no familiar sidewalks, no haunted glances, no memories waiting to ambush me on every street corner. Just the wide-open promise of something new. The resort where I was staying was small and tucked away, more intimate than luxurious. I hadn't wanted anything flashy. I wanted quiet, clean linens. Somewhere I could hear myself think again. The woman at the front desk welcomed me with a warm smile, handing me a key and gesturing toward a narrow path that led to a row of cottages framed by palm trees and hibiscus bushes. As I settled into the simple room, a bed, a desk, a small patio with a view of the sea, I felt lighter. Like I'd been dragging invisible chains for months, and they'd finally slipped free. That evening, I wandered down the beach barefoot, the sand soft and white beneath my feet. The sky was painted in streaks of tangerine and lavender as the sun dipped toward the horizon. I lifted my camera, unsure if it even still worked properly, and snapped a photo. The shutter click felt like a pulse. Familiar. Alive. I took another shot. Then another. The sea, the sky, a little girl dancing in the surf while her mother laughed nearby. I didn't think. I just let myself see. "Good eye," a voice said from behind me. I turned quickly and found a man standing a few feet away, camera in hand. He had sun-streaked brown hair, a kind face, and wore a loose white shirt rolled up at the sleeves. He smiled, not the kind of smile men give when they want something, but the kind that comes from shared interest. From recognition. "Thanks," I said, lowering my camera. "I'm Julian," he offered, stepping closer and holding out a hand. "Claire." He nodded toward my camera. "Old model, but a good one. You shoot often." "Not in a long time," I admitted. "I used to. Before life got complicated." Julian tilted his head. "Well, if you ever want to talk photography, I'm around. I've got a little studio up near the East Cliff. Mostly landscapes, portraits of locals, things that catch my eye." "Sounds peaceful," I said, and meant it. "It is. You look like you came here to find something." We parted ways as the sun melted into the sea, and I walked back to my room feeling oddly buoyant. It was the first time in weeks, maybe months, that I'd had a conversation not rooted in pain or pity. Julian hadn't asked where I was from or why I was alone. He hadn't looked at me like I was broken. He just talked to me like a person, like an artist. The next morning, I found myself wandering toward the cliffs. His studio wasn't hard to find. A whitewashed cottage with floor-to-ceiling windows and canvases leaning against the outside walls. The door was propped open. Inside, the space was filled with photos in all sizes, close-ups of wrinkled hands weaving fishing nets, wide shots of storm clouds crawling over the ocean, candid moments of laughter, stillness, life. Julian looked up from behind his desk and grinned. "Told you photography was therapy." "I just wanted to look," I said. "Then look." He gestured broadly. "This place is open to anyone with eyes." We talked for hours that day. About lighting, perspective, the difference between capturing something and truly seeing it. He asked me what kind of subjects I liked, and I confessed I didn't know anymore. He offered me one of his spare lenses to try. It felt strange, holding a camera again with purpose, but thrilling too. like touching a part of myself I'd neglected. For the next few days, I wandered the island with my camera slung over my shoulder. I photographed children chasing crabs along the shore, a storm rolling in from the south, an old man sleeping in a hammock beneath a palm tree. I didn't think about Daniel or Evelyn or what might have been. I just focused on light, texture, motion. Julian and I crossed paths often, sometimes talking for hours, sometimes just walking in companionable silence. He never asked for more, never intruded. He just gave me space to be. And in that space, I began to heal. One evening, we sat watching the sun dip low, cameras forgotten in our laps. He turned to me and said, "You don't look lost anymore." I glanced at the horizon, the sky a brilliant blaze of gold. "That's because I'm not trying to go back." He smiled, a quiet, knowing curve of his mouth. "Then you're exactly where you need to be." And for the first time, I believed it. When Julian mentioned Koh Maru, it sounded like something out of a novel. A lush island in Thailand, far more remote than Azure Cay, where a friend of his ran an eco-resort that doubled as a creative retreat. "It's not touristy," he said over coffee one morning, his camera strap tangled with mine as we compared shots. "But it's honest. Real. And I think you'd thrive there." At first, I wasn't sure. I had just started finding my footing again in Azure Cay, my rhythm, my breath. The thought of leaving so soon felt risky, even reckless. But something inside me was stirring again, something restless and brave, and maybe that was the very reason I said yes. Maybe I needed to see just how far I could go. 2 weeks later, I boarded a small flight from Azure Cay to Bangkok, then another to the southern coast, followed by a boat across clear, endless blue. Each leg of the journey peeled back another layer of my old life, until finally I arrived on Koh Maru, a quiet, verdant world that seemed to exhale peace with every rustle of its jungle trees. The eco-resort was nestled between the coastline and a gentle mountain ridge. It wasn't grand or ostentatious, just a collection of open-air bungalows, a central kitchen and lounge, and wooden paths that curved through gardens of tropical blooms and herbs. Everything smelled of lemongrass and sunlight. There were hammocks, shared dinners, solar panels, and a beautiful lack of urgency. The owner, Mina, greeted me barefoot and smiling, with strong arms and wise eyes. "Julian said you needed space," she said as we sat together on a porch overlooking the water. "Here, we give that. And purpose, if you want it." "I'd like both," I said honestly. She assigned me to a modest bungalow with a view of the sea and offered me a hybrid role, part administrative assistant for the resort, helping with bookings and correspondence, and part creative coordinator, organizing photography sessions, art workshops, and wellness retreats. It was more than I expected, but exactly what I needed. The days found their rhythm. Mornings began early with the scent of jasmine tea and the hum of life awakening. I answered emails from guests around the world, updated the website with photos I took myself, and helped design brochures and signage. I created photo diaries for the visitors, capturing quiet moments and turning them into keepsakes. Afternoons often drifted into creativity. I wandered with my camera, snapping scenes I would have missed before, waves lapping against weathered boats, the way sunlight filtered through banana leaves, locals laughing as they prepared market stalls. And slowly, I started hosting photography walks, encouraging guests to capture not just images but emotion, perspective. The first time someone thanked me for helping them see differently, I blinked back tears. Because I wasn't just healing. I was growing. Mina became both mentor and friend. She shared stories of how she built the resort after leaving a corporate life behind, how the island helped her rediscover herself. Her strength was quiet but unwavering, and I admired her more than I could say. One evening, while we were slicing mangoes in the open kitchen, she said, "Some places break us, Claire. But some places teach us how to rebuild." Koh Maru was doing exactly that. There were hard moments, of course. Times when the silence got too loud, or I caught myself wondering what might have been if things had gone differently. But those moments came less frequently now, and when they did, I let them pass without clinging. I stopped checking for messages from Daniel. I even blocked Evelyn's number the day I found myself hesitating to delete her latest bitter voicemail. I wasn't that woman anymore. I wasn't waiting for closure from people who had tried to rewrite my story with lies. Instead, I wrote my own story. In my journal. Through my photos. In the conversations I shared with strangers who came from all corners of the world to rest and rediscover themselves, too. We were all searching in our own ways. And for once, I didn't feel like I was trailing behind. I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. Julian kept in touch, sending me updates from Azure Cay and snippets of the island's beauty. There was no romance between us, only respect and a quiet understanding that our paths had crossed at the perfect time. He had helped me take the first step away, and now I was learning how to walk on my own. One afternoon, as I stood barefoot in the shallows with my camera, watching children chase tiny fish through the clear water, I realized something had shifted again. Not in a sudden, dramatic way, but gently, like a tide turning. I wasn't healing anymore. I was living. Fully. Freely. Fiercely. And I wasn't going back. The sun crested over the hills of Koh Maru in slow, golden waves, spilling its warmth across the sea and into the open windows of my bungalow. I stood barefoot on the wooden deck, a mug of lemongrass tea cupped in my hands, breathing in the quiet. The kind of quiet that wasn't empty, but sacred. It had been 6 months since I arrived on this island, and every single day had brought me closer to myself. This morning felt different, not because of any event, but because of a deep, subtle knowing inside me. A shift had finally settled. I wasn't waiting for something anymore. Not for forgiveness or answers or closure from the people who had hurt me. I had become my own answer. My own ending. My own beginning. I went back inside and reached for my camera, slinging the strap over my shoulder. The ocean was glimmering with the early light, and the fishermen were already docking their boats, their silhouettes cut sharp against the horizon. I walked the familiar path past the garden Mina tended with such care, down to the sand where I always began my day. The world felt rich with beauty again, not in a performative, curated way, but in its simplest forms. The curve of a smile, the flutter of a bird's wings, the ripple of tide meeting shore. Snapping photos wasn't just a passion anymore, it was a language. A form of reverence. With every click, I was not only capturing what I saw, but affirming that I was here, fully present, fully alive. After the morning's light work, scheduling next week's retreat guests, replying to inquiries, I sat beneath the banyan tree near the main lodge and opened my journal. The leather cover had softened with use, and its pages were nearly full now, a living map of my transformation. I turned to a fresh page and wrote, "Today, I let go completely." No hesitation. No grief. Just truth. I thought of Hillsmere Bay and the woman I used to be there. The Claire who waited for love to validate her worth. Who bent herself to be accepted, who silenced her instincts to keep the peace. I didn't hate that version of me, I pitied her. She didn't know yet how strong she was. She had no idea that survival would one day lead to flight, to freedom. A breeze lifted my hair, and I felt it like a sign. Later that afternoon, I sat down with Mina, and over our shared bowl of coconut curry, I said, "I'm staying." She smiled knowingly, as if she had already sensed the decision days ago. "This island chose you too." I nodded. "I want to build something here. I don't know what it'll look like exactly, but I know I want my life to be here, simple, intentional, creative." Mina leaned forward. "Then we'll make space for it." And just like that, another piece of my life clicked into place. No ceremony, no dramatic turning point. Just a calm certainty that I was planting roots, not because I was hiding, but because I'd finally found fertile ground. That evening, I walked to my favorite cliff just past the eastern ridge. I brought my camera, of course, but I didn't use it right away. I just sat on the edge, legs dangling over the stone, watching the sun slide slowly down the sky. And as the colors bled across the clouds, I pulled out my phone, not to scroll or check messages, but to do one last thing. I opened Daniel's contact. For months, it had been buried in my list, untouched but still there. I stared at the name for a long moment, my thumb hovering. And then I deleted it. No bitterness. No lingering hurt. Just a clean, quiet goodbye. I did the same with Evelyn's number, with the old photos backed up in my cloud, our engagement, our rehearsal dinner, smiling faces I no longer recognized. I wiped them all. Not out of anger, but out of release. That chapter was over. And I didn't need to keep rereading it to remember who I was. I stayed there long after the sun had vanished, watching the stars emerge one by one. The sea below glittered in reflection, and somewhere down the beach, someone played soft guitar. I closed my eyes and listened to the music carry through the night. I wasn't the same woman who had once stood at the edge of a chapel in a white dress, her heart breaking in slow motion. That woman had been tested, betrayed, and broken open, but she had survived. She had chosen herself. And now, in this small island far from everything she used to know, she was being reborn. I walked back to my bungalow barefoot, camera slung at my side, the sand cool beneath my feet. The air smelled like salt and jasmine. My skin glowed with sun and peace. And in that quiet, I whispered to myself, I am free. With every photo I took, with every morning I rose, with every breath I claimed, I was writing a new story. One where I wasn't waiting to be loved. I already was. By the world. By the sky. By the woman I'd become. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.